Hmm. Huh. This is the Explain It to Me podcast. And I just wanted to check in on the YouTube side saying that we just posted a new podcast, a guide to the modern era of Doctor Who, 2005 to present. And instead of just repeating everything here that I did there, just go check it out on your podcaster of choice. We're available on Spotify, YouTube podcasts, Apple, Podbean, Podcast Addict, and I just wanted to do a little plug and hope that you check it out. I wanted this to be a bit more casual and just make it clear why I'm doing this. Explain It to Me podcast is because I think we need more explanatory, explaining videos and podcasts that don't assume as much. Nothing is more valuable than passion, and I'm passionate about a lot of these things. And Doctor Who has been a pop culture love of mine since 1996, I think, maybe 95. So we're going on, well, almost 30 years now. And since 2005, when it came back, it's been a show that has had its ups and downs, but at the most basic level, it has been a wonderful experience. I'm I understand that there are people who watch the show with less baggage. Though that's usually a bad thing in this case, I think it's a good thing for me. There being new Doctor Who is all I could find want in Doctor Who. Because I went so many years just reading the books and watching VHS tapes of shows that were off the air that had not been shown in years before I was born. Any Doctor Who is something I'm going to check out. At least TV. I don't really have time to read the books anymore. I don't get to read as much fiction as I would like that isn't comic books. But I wanted to give a guide, the kind of recording that I would do if my friends let me tell them about Doctor Who. And if EITM Pod is going to be any sort of community, any sort of chance for me to talk to people the way I would my friends if I was, info jumping on them or talk to my wife, it would be explain it to me as if I don't know what you're talking about, as if I'm only curious and not knowledgeable. And I don't want it to be mansplaining. I don't want it to be pretentious. I want to share my passion and my knowledge about a lot of things, the overlap of which is sometimes a bit hard to tell. And I think that Doctor Who is a great example. This episode is about the modern era, so 2005 to present. I did the math, and by my count, there's 188 episodes. I mention a bunch of them. I tried to keep my recommendations pretty short. There are episodes where, there's seasons where I argue there are there's one essential, and there are ones out of 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 episode seasons. And there are ones where I'm saying, 6 out of the 13 are good, and you need these ones, but you really should consider those. It also made me reflect now separated by a couple years, on where the show went before it switched over in the States to Disney Plus when it was still on BBC America. And the people known as the 12th and 13th Doctors, so Peter Capaldi and Jodie Whittaker, who I will obviously cover in the podcast, which you should listen to, and please like, rate, and subscribe. That whole thing. Capaldi gave it his all. I don't think Moffat gave him his best. I think Stephen Moffat wrote some of the best Doctor Who ever made. I don't think he wrote the best Doctor Who when he was writing Peter Capaldi's one. I think Clara Oswald, who I'll discuss in the pod, um, was more interesting when she wasn't a mystery box, to use the term that is popular in some parts of the internet, describing basically how J.J. Abrams did Lost and things like that. That, you know, the problem is the only thing that matters, not actually any sort of solution, just making it a what's in the box kind of storyline. I think people matter more than I think the problem a person presents or the questions around a person never matter as much as the person themselves. And fictional people are people. They're not real, obviously. But if it was called The Impossible Girl, I didn't want to use the term in the podcast because, well, she's a grown woman. And while girl could be used in some contexts, I felt weird about it. I think in this context, Clara as a companion didn't really start until after Name of the Doctor, which was the end of that first run with her and Matt Smith, the first season, and then going into the anniversary special, and then the Christmas regeneration story for so Name of the Doctor, season finale, Day of the Doctor, 50th anniversary, and Time of the Doctor. This was episode afterwards that was the anniversary. I think she works better as a person than she does as a plot device because I don't think people should be used as instruments and plot devices. Obviously, in stories, you're going to have it, but I think characters are better when they're characters and less when they're contrivances. After she left, I don't think the show knew what it was doing. I think Moffat didn't want to let go to some extent, but also didn't know where to go. And then with Chris Chibnall and Judy Whittaker, which is a run I was defending at the time it was on. But I was there are storylines in it which I don't want to spoil. One in particular, the main one, that I can appreciate as a fan of Doctor Who and as someone who is familiar with what's called the Cartmel Master Plan, which was a thing a showrunner or producer, I think they called it script editors. They had different names back then. Um, yeah, crazy to think of television before summer of '89 is different than television after spring of 2005. Cartmel Master Plan was this idea with the Seventh Doctor, which I can get into when I do that video or that episode, to try to expand the mystery of the Doctor. It's been covered in books. There's canon status, I guess, can't be anymore. But it was this idea, and a bunch of it played a role in the storyline. Uh, Chibnall uh, did with Jody Whittaker. Not always following it, just it was clearly I think he was in conversation. And I can defend it. I can cite episodes like The Brain of Morbius from the Fourth Doctor back in the 70s, early 70s, for certain things being true or consistent or not. But there's an old saying when I used to work in politics, which I did, of when you're explaining, you're losing. I don't think it's true. Otherwise, why would I have an explanatory podcast? But I do think that this is an element where things need change. So I have more to say. We'll see what's up, and hopefully check out the podcast. Yeah.